There we are, we're recording. So welcome to Painting Through the Pandemic. I'm Shauna Sue. I own Crooked Door Studio in Uptown Marysville. We've been painting through the pandemic for a little over a year, like a year and 2 weeks. Shortly after when the pandemic started, it started to get really serious. Friday the 13th in March, that was our last class in the studio. And I made the difficult decision a couple days later to go ahead and close down and go virtual. So we've been completely virtual for a little over a year, but fingers crossed, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. So excited about it. I'm aiming for end of May. That's okay, Jody. I am aiming for end of May to get back in the studio, to have classes in the studio again. But it's my goal to continue to do Zoom classes as well as public classes. Schedule might change up a little bit. Stay tuned for that. We might move to Friday nights. Not sure yet, but it's all going to happen. It's very exciting. So if you haven't joined us before, class tonight is perfectly free. You don't have to pay a penny for it, right? The Zoom link is public to everyone. But if you so choose, I have listed out in the chat box places where you can donate to the studio. Like I said, we've been virtual for a little over a year, and because of the donations that you all have sent and the supplies that you've purchased, that has helped me pay my rent to reserve my studio space in the Uptown. So we'll have that space to go back to in May, fingers crossed. So thank you all so much from the bottom of my heart to everyone that donates to the studio. Y'all are making it happen. And I couldn't be more pleased because I couldn't do it without you. So thank you so much for that. I also have listed out in the chat box supplies. Don't worry, we're going to go through it all. If this is just like any other night, right? If you have been with us before, take a break, run outside if you need to, catch some sunlight. About 5 to 15 minutes of vitamin D, or 5 to 15 minutes. What did I learn today? 5 to 15 minutes of sunlight on your arms, hands, and face is enough to give you a boost of vitamin D for the day. So if you want to go outside, come back in at 7:15, and then we'll be ready to put brush to canvas. So I want to run through supplies. I want to make sure, since we're all painting in our own spaces, I want to make sure you have everything set up the way you need. If we were at the studio, you would come in and everything would be all set, but that's not the case. So let's take a few minutes and go through everything. First things first, since you are painting at home in your own space, take a look around, make sure there's nothing that you're super concerned about if you get paint on it. The paint that I'm using, and if you got paint from the studio, the little containers, the paint that you're using is acrylic paint. It's water-based, water-soluble. If you get it on your clothes and it dries, it's a real bear to get off, okay? So let's take a moment and look around. When you're looking around, make sure you also have either a paint shirt or an apron on. It's really easy when you're painting to get paint on your shirt and not even notice it. Yeah, that's what I know about that. Oh, if you have sleeves, rub your sleeves up, okay? Roll those sleeves up out the way. All right, so we've looked around. We've checked our space. Everything's good. I'm not worried about getting paint on anything in here. Good to go. Canvas. The painting that we're doing tonight is that lovely sunflower with a little bit of green and the blues in the background, swirling in the background. The original picture, not mine, it's just something we found that we liked, that we wanted to try to duplicate. And that's how artists learn, right? You look at something and you try to copy it, whether it's another picture, whether it's a photograph, whether it's another painting, whether it's nature, right? You just go outside and you try. That's how we learn, right? Is by observing and absorbing all of that and trying to duplicate it. So it's not my picture. Mine's not going to look like the original at the end. Yours won't look like the original. Yours won't look like mine. It won't look like anybody else's. It will be uniquely you. So you make it exactly what you want it to be, right? If you don't want blue in the background, you don't put blue in the background. If you want a red sunflower, you go there, okay? My job tonight is to talk to you about techniques and steps and ways we're going to walk through it, okay? So with all of that said, I have the original is square. I have a rectangular canvas. So you get to decide how you're going to orient your canvas. Are you going to flip it and do it landscape, horizontal? Or are you going to flip it and go vertical? In my brain, I'm already thinking through this. I'm going to do mine vertical, and I'm going to have my sunflower down here at the bottom, and my petals will reach probably a little further than halfway up if my petals come up. That leaves me space up here if I decide I want to write a quote on it later. I might. I'm not sure yet. Haven't decided. But in my brain, that's how this works. Sunflower down here, petals coming up and out like a sunshine, right? And then I'll have this space I can figure out what I want to do with later. I might just put some really cool swirls in there and leave it. So again, my canvas is 16 by 20. If you got canvas from the studio, that's what you have, 16 by 20 stretched. I like to point out now the stretch, they're wrapped around, stretched, stapled on the back. You can paint the edges or not, but decide now if you're going to paint the edges or not. There's really no in between. If you start painting the edges and you stop, it looks sloppy and unfinished. So when I say paint the edges, I mean literally all the way around. So it looks like your painting is wrapped all the way around. So again, do it or don't, but really no middle ground there, okay? All right, so I have a paint shirt, I have an apron, I have a canvas to paint upon. I have a water cup. I like to use a mason jar or a coffee cup. I'm less likely to knock it over because it's heavy. It's got some weight to it. Halfway full with cool or cold water, never warm or hot, always cool or cold. I've got a little stack of paper towels down there to blot my brushes off on, okay? And then brushes. You can really do this painting with any brushes, but I'm gonna keep my 3 rock stars here tonight. These are the 3 that I used almost every painting. So my biggest brush, I have a big oval wash brush. Yours might be oval, yours might be flat, yours might be angled, but it's your biggest brush that you have. Then some kind of a medium brush. Again, yours might be flat, might be angled, might be rounded, and then some kind of a pointy brush. This brush might be bigger than this. It might be bigger around than my brush, but you want to make sure whichever brush you choose, whether it's bigger or smaller, that it comes to a really nice, lovely point. Okay, that's the important part. So it comes to a point. Now these 3 brushes, or whatever brushes you choose, while I'm not using them, I'm going to take them, dump them in my water cup, and leave them there. Okay, it's a good reminder that when I'm done with the brush, it goes in the water cup. But anyway, they live there so they don't get dried out halfway through class, and I don't have dried paint in my brushes. Then when I'm all done at the end of the night, I'll take them, wash them in warm soapy water, lay them flat to dry to put back in my paint bag. Okay. All right, paint. Let's talk colors. Oh, colors. I have a lot of fun colors to play with tonight. Okay, so what I'm playing with tonight, I have blockout white, kind of hard to see on a white plate, but I have blockout white. You might have titanium, and that's okay, just some kind of white. I have a nice bright yellow. I have this mustardy yellow, which in the Blick world, in the Blick student acrylic world, they call it raw umber, but it's like a mustardy yellow. I have a reddish brown here, which is either burnt sienna or, yeah, it's burnt sienna. Some kind of sienna. It's like a reddish brown. And then I have a burnt umber, which is just a lovely chocolate brown, like a milk chocolate brown. So those are going to be my colors that I'm really going to play in with my sunflowers. And then for background, I have phthalo green, phthalo blue, and then a little bit of black. We're not going to use much black, just a little bit. If you got paint from the studio, you take those containers and dump out just a little bit on your plate and then snap the lid back on. And as long as you snap that lid on and keep the air out of it, these will keep for weeks or months. I don't even know how many months I've had this yellow in my bag because I don't use yellow that often. every time I open it, it's still good in there. So I'll use it, right? Okay, let's see. Something else that you might have in your paint bag, which I didn't get out tonight. It appears I may have lost it. I'll find it later. Paint pen. I like to keep a paint pen in my bag. I feel that every artist should sign their work. Even if you don't like it and you're never going to display it, I think it's important to have your name on it somewhere so you can identify it later. I'd like to see signatures on the front, but you don't have to sign on the front. You can sign on the back if you want. But I feel that that's important for every artist to have their signature on their work at some point. And that's what I use a paint pen for, because I'm really bad at signing with a brush. Small detail work is not my forte, and my name is just too much with a brush. So I keep a paint pen for that purpose. Okay, are you ready? It's 7:14. It's a little weird. I didn't have Marie here to keep me on target. But I say we go ahead and get started. All right. So, last thing we want to do, and then it'll be 7:15. Then we'll be right on schedule. Last thing I want to do, I want to talk about the painting, okay? Because I want to give you a roadmap for the direction we're going to go. If I were taking a class like this, that's something I would know, what direction we're going to move in. Because I know you all move at your own pace. That way you'll know the direction we're going to go if you want to work ahead a little bit. It's entirely up to you. So the first thing I'm going to do, I would like to flip this, but I haven't frozen my screen, so the picture's going to rotate if I rotate it. I'm going to paint it like that. Oop. I'm going to paint mine with the sunflower on the bottom, okay? We're going to map out where that sunflower goes. You might, at this point, grab an extra plate, an extra paper plate to trace to get a nice round center. So we're going to map out where that sunflower goes. We're going to map out the petals and give them just a basic coat of yellow. And then we're going to play in that background. We're going to play in a little bit of green. There's a little bit of green back in there that would make you think leaves, but they're not really leaves. There's nothing very distinct about them, but there's a little bit of green. And then we'll get into these fun blue swirls. And then we'll work back down into our sunflower and get some layers in there. Okay. But remember, really quick, this is how I'm going to paint mine, like this. Okay. Let's get started, shall we? So, extra plate. The first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to figure out where the center of my sunflower goes. And on a 16 by 20 canvas, move my paint out of the way. On a 16 by 20 canvas, about half of a paper plate is pretty darn perfect. In my brain, on a 16 by 20 canvas this way, I was thinking I would need about a fat hand width on this side and a fat hand width on this side for petals. So half a paper plate just about does that for me. Now, if you have decided to paint yours the other direction, if you're going to do your painting landscape, I would probably think to stretch my hand out a little bit, have that much room on either side, and think maybe a big lovely half moon. This isn't going to be big enough for you, I don't think. Or maybe it will be. Up to you. Okay, here we go. So I'm going to start with my medium brush. Whichever medium brush makes you happy, not your pointy brush, but maybe a medium brush. And if your brushes are new, we always tap, tap, tap in the bottom of the water cup, right? Soften it up a little bit. I do this with old brushes too, because they might have a little dried paint left over in them. So let's soften that guy up. Tap, 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 very gentle. I'm going to dry him off on the paper towel. Dry him off. And I'm going to use a little bit of brown and black. I should say brown and a tiny bit of black. The brown by itself isn't heavy enough, so I need to add a little bit of black to make it stronger. Now, anytime you take paint, we always go in the edge, never the middle of the puddle. You don't want to mess the whole puddle up, but always in the edge. So I'm going to take just a little bit of paint right now. With my medium brush, a tiny, tiny bit of black. and about twice that much brown, but it's still just a little bit of paint right now. And the brown that I'm using is that chocolate, that milk chocolate brown. And I'm going to put my plate on here and trace it. I'm going to step in front real quick. My apologies. Again, it's about a half a plate. You can do this with a pencil if you want, but I find it works just as well to do it with a plate. And then I'm just going to lay this plate out to dry somewhere, throw it back in my stack, and use it for a paint palette later. And then you can use a bigger brush if you want, or you can stick with this medium brush. But let's use brown, tiny bit of black, and let's just fill that in. Okay. I'm not super concerned about how we fill it in right now. We just need to get that dark base on there. So black, twice as much brown as black. And let's just fill that half circle in. We'll come back and fancy it up later with some seeds. We'll play in it later, but we have to get that solid base down there first. Again, brown, little bit of black. Just filling that in. Now's the time to decide, are you going to paint your edges? If you are, I will say it's much easier to paint your edges as you go than it is to try to go back and match them up and fill them in later. So if you're going to paint your edges, now's the time. Let's get down there. As we paint tonight, I hope you guys have your music turned up. You're taking some time to breathe. Right, Alicia? We're taking some time to breathe. Taking some time to let go of the week. Because I know a lot of us are still in very stressful situations. I know we're all starting to come back out of this whole pandemic experience, but we're still very much in it. So this is your time to forget about all of that stuff. And just let the paint flow. Just let it be whatever it's going to be tonight. And once you have this much done and it's filled in, let's go ahead and clean that brush out. I'll give you another minute or so to do that. Ooh, I'm playing paint water roulette over here. Did you catch that? I just set my paint water down by my beverage. You know, I'm going to end up drinking that paint water at some point, or dumping my brush in my cup. Wouldn't be the first time I've drank paint water. Won't be the last. Okay, so I'm going to clean that medium brush out. It's okay if it's not super clean, right? But just tap, tap, tapping in the bottom of the cup, knocking the paint out of it. I see a lot of people want to clean the paint off on their paper towel, and they work really hard at that paper towel to get paint out of their brush. So much easier if you do it this way. Just gently tap, tap, tap it in the bottom. That knocks the paint out of it. If you do that for 30 seconds or so, and then dry it off on your paper towel, all the paint is out of it. Okay. So I think we're going to start to map out that sunflower. Here we go. Ready? So our sunflower, if you look at our original picture, I need to go in and freeze my screen. You know, give me a second. Let me see if I can figure out how to do this. This is a really old tablet. Screen rotation. I think I did it. So now if I hold it, yes. Using the brain. Okay, so this is the way I'm going to do my painting. Okay, so I want to start with this petal right here that's it's kind of close to the middle. Not really, it's a little offset. You could put it in the middle. That wouldn't be bad, right? But this big guy right back here. So if we look at the original painting, in the background, I have, looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5, 6, 7, 8, 8-ish petals in the background. And then I have some petals, which I know it's hard to see on here. It's kind of washed out, but I have petals that overlay are a little smaller, a little closer to the center. Let's start with those big background petals. And I'm going to start with this big guy that's right here, really close to the middle. So I think at this point, I'm just going to use yellow, just the bright yellow, maybe a little bit of white if you want. And I'm going to use my medium brush, but I'm going to use my medium brush skinny ways. I'm going to use them vertical to do some sketching. Again, this is just the first level, the first layer of these petals, just so we can figure out where our background belongs more than anything else. So bright yellow, maybe a tiny bit of white. Yeah, tiny bit. Mostly bright yellow. And let's see that first big petal. Oh, I want him to come all the way up here, I think. Further than halfway. Start up here. And I think my petals are going to look like big, fat raindrops. Great big, fat raindrops. They kind of barely curve in right at the bottom, just barely. And I think I'm going to go ahead and fill him in. And I'm filling him in the same way I painted him. Up and down. Yellow, a little bit of white. Not super duper concerned about my finished petal here. Kind of like that center. Just want to get that base color on. We'll come back and play more with it later. And I'm getting down close to the center, using caution though, because I don't want to hit that wet center and drag a bunch of that brown, black, muddy color up into my petal. If you do, it's okay, no worries. But let's try to keep that petal yellow. I'm just going to work my way around and put more petals in there. So a good tip, use your brush as a measuring stick. Let me show you what I mean. So if I imagine that the middle of my sunflower, the middle of the entire sunflower down to the center, right about here, I want my petals to all radiate out from there. I'm going to get a long handle brush and show you what I mean. So if this is the center, and I've gone out there to the end of that petal, rotate around. My next one will be right about here. That's where the tip of that will be. You know what I might even do to make life a little bit easier for myself? So there's that one. I come over here and I go, ooh, I want another petal right here. This is where the tip of it will start. What if I do another one over here? Just using this as a little measuring stick. Something else you can do if you struggle, I see people when they paint sunflowers like this, or when they paint flowers, their petals get kind of warped and twisty. I had really good luck painting this first petal top and down to the center. So now what if I turn my canvas and now this is the top down to the center? Right? Your canvas is not fixed in place. Remember that. Rotate it, make life easier for yourself. This petal goes all the way up and off. Again, I'm just using yellow, a little bit of white. Oh, that's fun. All right. So I've got that back layer of petals on there. Just going to fill them in with that yellow and white. And again, to fill them in, I'm just going up and down, following the contour of that petal. Don't break stride right now and start painting your petal back and forth, left to right. Follow that same contour the way you sketched it on there. Not going to worry about those smaller petals just yet. I want to get those big background petals on there first. So let's keep going and fill those background petals in. And then we're going to, here in a minute, when we're done with that, we're going to pick a contrasty color and just kind of map out where some of those smaller petals are going to go. Trying to decide, so edges, right? We're going to paint our edges. Am I going to wrap my petals around? Or am I going to paint green over there? Because this section right in through here, this is going to be green, and this little piece down here is going to be green. I think I might just paint my edges green and blue. But you can wrap your petals around and paint the edges yellow if you want. That's up to you. Whatever makes you happy. Because the world needs more of that, more of happiness. I will say from experience, I'm not a fan of, if I have a line, I'm not a fan of wrapping that line around. So like those petal lines, not a fan of wrapping those around, simply because I'm not good at getting them to look right. From the side, when you look at the edge of the painting, then the petal, oh, it like the petal would look off a little bit. The angle would be kind of weird. So I'm not a fan of wrapping petals around, but you do what makes you happy. Okay. Okay. I'll give you a few more minutes. Again, I'm not super concerned about those petals just yet. We'll play more in them in detail later. How about another 5 minutes? Another 5 minutes to get those big background petals on there. And then we'll come in here in about 5 minutes. We'll come in and put where some of those smaller petals are going to go. It's funny, I know the focus of this painting is the sunflower. I'm way more excited about the blue swirls in the background. I'm more excited about that than I am the actual focus of the painting. Brains are weird. Oh, weird brains and paintings. I need ideas for April. I already have one picked out that is for sure going on the calendar. But I need ideas. Send me ideas for what you want to paint in April. When's Easter? Is Easter next weekend? Should we do an Easter painting next Saturday? Yeah, I think we should. We need an Easter painting. Really kind of want to paint a bunny butt with glitter on the tail, right? I love all my people are nodding their head. Yes, with white glitter on the bunny tail. Yes. Oh, Orsina's, I see I just got tagged. Would you tag me in? Did you send me a painting? Did you send me a picture? I gotta look. Oh, paint night. Ooh. Is that yours, Alicia? I like the way you, oh, please tell me you're all doing a quarter of, yeah, great minds. I like it. Okay, so 3 more minutes at 7:40. We'll move on. Here, when we're on a drying break next time, I have to tell you a new chicken story. Not new chickens. I don't have new chickens, but Betty, our rooster number 2, Betty's getting ready to go to the stew pot. Not really. I won't eat Betty, but Betty's feeling her oats. Our fenced in chickens, the fence is down. They have become free range chickens. Now, whenever I walk out the front door, Betty is there to ask me where I'm going. And she doesn't do it in a polite way. Betty's going to wind up in the stew pot. All righty, so let's start to talk about those smaller petals and decide now, do your smaller petals for contrast, because you're not going to be able to see them if you put yellow on yellow. So decide, are you going to go a little bit lighter to see them or a little bit darker? We'll define them a little more later, but I'm trying to decide if I'm going to go yellow and add a little more white so I can see them, or if I'm going to go yellow and add a little bit of that mustard yellow. Well, I think I might go that direction, just so I can see them. I don't want huge contrast, but again, if I paint them the same color, I'm never going to see them on top of those big petals. So let me show you what I mean. So I'm going to take that medium brush and clean it out. And I'm going to continue to use it skinny ways, sketching with it skinny ways, right? So clean it out, dry it off. And I think I'm going to go yellow. So my bright yellow I have been using. And then I'm going to add in, just for contrast, the tiniest bit of this raw sienna. I was like, what does Blake call this color? This mustardy yellow color. Just a tiny bit of that. If you don't have that mustardy color to darken your yellow, don't use black. You could add a little bit of brown. Okay. So I'm going bright yellow with just a little bit of that mustardy color. And I want to put those shorter petals in there. They're about half as big as those big petals. So I'm going to have one here. They're the same shape. I'm going to go a little bit darker to make it easier for you to see. I don't want you to go darker though. All right, like that. And remember, just like the big petals, flip your canvas if that makes your life easier. And I want to fill them in. Again, the contrast is going to be really minimal. They're going to be kind of hard to see, but make your yellow either a little bit lighter or a little bit darker so you can pick them out of there later when we start to go in and add shading. Maybe this one's a little taller. Maybe this one's got a fun little curve to the end of it. Let's go all the way around. Remember, as you put these smaller petals on there, Sometimes nature is very even and very orderly. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's a little weird, a little chaotic. Okay. As I look at my painting, I'm like, wow, those petals are all pretty precise. When I do some shading, I'm going to curve them and turn them a little bit, because I think that's one of the things that I really like about the original. The ends of some of these petals have like a little hook to them, a little curve, makes them a little more interesting. And if I curve these a little bit, that really helps flow into the background, into that swirly blue background. I'm curious, Orsinas, I'm curious if you're all gonna do the same background. Oh, I froze. Oh, I'm back. I just looked up and I froze. That was unnerving. I'm curious if you're gonna do all the same color in your backgrounds, or are you gonna pick different fun colors? Oh, decisions. Sorry. But depending on where you're going to put it, you need to do the color that matches the room, right? Sorry. Oh. Okay, let's take just another minute here. Get those petals on there. I'm gonna take my medium brush. I'm just laughing to myself now, Alicia. I'm gonna take my medium brush, clean that guy out. Get ready to put some green on there. So I'll give you a couple more minutes for this small petals. Oh, shoot. Okay, so while we're finishing up those small petals, let's talk a little bit about how this background is going to work. The beauty of having the little bit of green there into the blue is that's a really easy transition. Like how I did that? That's a really easy transition. So if you look at the original picture, there aren't real defined leaves back there. There's just that little bit of green that gives you the idea that they might be leaves, but then it just transitions right on into the blue. Blue and green work really well together that way, especially phthalo blue and phthalo green. Okay, so I'm going to decide now where my green goes. I've got a little spot down here between petals, little spot here. This is going to come up here and just kind of fade off. I'll tie the blue back into it. I don't know, I might do a little, just a tiny bit of green down in there, maybe just a little. Some green here and then green down in here. And if you're painting your edges, I might paint green up, about up to this petal, and then just kind of stop, and then we'll transition it into blue. Okay, I'm going to use my my medium brush. You can use your pointy brush. You can use your small round if you want, because I want to get down in some of those crevices. Okay, I'm going to use, I think, straight up phthalo green. I think, I'm not sure yet. So a little bit of phthalo green. And when I say I'm not sure yet, I might mix a little bit of yellow white in that phthalo green because that would make it more of a lime color. Or you can use phthalo green with a little bit of blue to darken it and make it just a real deep, deep green color. So that's up to you. So I'm going to start by getting right down here into this V. And do you see how I'm painting that? I'm putting my brush skinny ways down into that V and following the contour of those petals and making it look like a starburst out of there. Okay. My green is following the contour of those petals. Add a little bit of blue down in there and see how I feel about that. Ooh, I like the green with the blue. Tiny bit of blue if you're going to go there, okay? Because that blue, that phthalo blue especially, is so incredibly powerful. It'll overwhelm your green really fast. But let me get nice and close and show you. I added just a little bit of phthalo blue in there. There's straight phthalo green. There's phthalo green with a little bit of phthalo blue. It's very subtle, but it gives it this really fun turquoisey color. I'm going to come up and just disappear into nothing. I'll tie that into the blue. So how about, let's take the next 10 minutes or so and work on that. Get our green in there, get your edges. If you're painting your edges, go ahead and get them. Get them with that green. See, I might put just a little down in there. Bringing it up and just fanning it out so it'll be easy to bring the blue down into it. Do a little down in here too. So let's keep working on this till about 8 o'clock. And then at 8 o'clock, we'll talk about our blue swirls. And then we'll come back into our petals and we'll work in the center of our sunflower. And don't forget edges. If you have decided to paint your edges, don't forget. Oh, gotta get that bottom edge. Don't forgot. Okay, again, about 8 o'clock, we'll move on. If you're already done and you're ready to move on, let me give you some homework real quick that you can do in just a few seconds. Look up, Google the center of a sunflower. If you look really closely, if you haven't before, if you look really closely at this, getting a call, sorry. The seeds grow in concentric circles, like a bullseye. So when we get ready to play in the center of that sunflower, that's how we're going to put those seeds in. It's almost going to look kind of like a little bit of a rainbow. The way we're going to put them in, we're going to start to fill them in like a bullseye down to the middle. So in our 5 minutes that we have, if you're done with that little bit of green, you could Google sunflower center or sunflower seed head and see what that looks like to get some idea of the direction we're going to go. I hope you guys have music up. I don't know about you, but my classic rock is hitting it tonight. Oh, Lori, that's adorable. Oh, that's happening, Lori. The picture you sent me, that's happening. I think that's happening next weekend. That is so cute. That's super cute. Well done. I like that. It's a shame that it's so close to Easter that I didn't think and plan ahead, and we could have done that one this weekend, but that's okay. That'll be a fun one to learn on too. We can talk about tulips, about how to paint tulip flowers. I like it. Few more minutes, and I know a lot of you want to know when is a good time to clean brush out, or not clean brush out, but get clean water. Not worried about it yet. Clean water will come if you so choose after we paint the blue, I think. Once we get that blue in that sky, we're going to come back and work in our flower, and you're going to want to make sure that you don't have blue left over in your brush, because you don't want to turn your flower like a muddy green color. So I'm not worried about clean water just yet. So about 3 minutes. Okay, so I'm curious, while we're waiting to move on, 2 minutes. Has anyone out there, you'll have to pop it in the chat box if you have, has anyone out there dyed farm fresh eggs before that are other than white? I'm curious, because my girls are on overload right now, and we're getting close to like 2 dozen eggs a day. And I have people asking me now with Easter coming, well, how do they take dye? I don't know. So you'll have to let me know if you have tried. Absolutely, Amy. We'll take a few minutes. Yep. So how about majority rules? Here in 2 minutes, we'll move on. And if you're not ready, I will have you flail wildly in 2 minutes. And if we have a bunch of people flailing, then I'll give you another 5. There's Mandy. There's Mandy and Dad. Hi, I just now saw you. It's a sunflower. I should have known you'd be here for this one. It's good to see you, honey. I'm so glad you're here. And then Andrea, you have to let me know how Flash is doing. Okay, so it is 8 o'clock. If you need another 5 minutes, flail wildly. Oh, I don't see much flailing. Oh, Amy. Okay, Amy and Tiffany, that's fair. Okay, I will give you another 5 minutes because we're doing really good on time. So if you're done and ready to move on, take a break. Go step outside, watch the sunset, right? We'll give it about 8:05. We'll move on. If you are up and about and moving around, make sure brushes are in water cup. Okay. You don't want any dried brushes rolling around someplace. And I'm going to go ahead and take this next 4 or 5 minutes and turn my camera off just for a moment so I can text my husband real quick. Be right back. Okay. So another 3-ish minutes. Oh, Andrea, more meds. I'm sorry. But are the meds making him feel better? Oh, goodness. I'm sorry. It's hard when they get older. Sweet babies. Just occurred to me. I was looking at my picture on the screen. I missed a little green spot there. We'll resolve that. Zoop. There we go. Better. Oh, do you think it's a food allergy? Oh, sweet baby. Oh, we have to be really careful with Gertrude because she's special needs all the way around, and she's on a super special diet. And um, my husband made the mistake of giving her like a dried banana chip, and she lost her mind. So now every time the banana chips come out of the cupboard, gotcha, sweet baby. All right, about another 30 seconds or so, and we're gonna move on. We're gonna move on to that blue in the background. Oh, oh, sweet Flash. They are demanding, aren't they? But if you get in the same place I'm at with Gertrude, if I ignore her, she just poops on the floor. I didn't even think she had to poop, but I was ignoring her, so she pooped. Okay, 8:05. Let's go ahead and move on. So we have a lot of space up here to cover. So you can decide now, are you going to start with do you need to start with your medium brush to get down in some of those crevices? Or can you do this with your big brush? I'm going with my big brush. So I'm going to use a lot of blue, mostly phthalo blue, and a tiny bit of white. And I'm going to lay the ground for how I want this to look. If you're doing a project like my Orsina friends are, at this point, I don't know if you want to put your layers all together on the table so your swirls match. I don't know how you're doing your background. Something to ponder. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to I'm just using my big brush. I'm going to jump right in, and I'm going to use phthalo blue and just a little bit of white. I'll add more white as we go. And I'm going to come up and then come off of this into a lovely big swirl. Come up the side of this petal and off into a big swirl. And then what if I do another? See, what if I come up this side? What if that swirls? Ooh, what if it swirls back down this way? See, I'm doing this with nice, big, long, bold strokes. Big, long strokes. And I'm going to start by laying the ground by coming off of those petals, and then I can make my strokes bolder and fill in as I go. So now I need to come up off of this one. Oh, that's nice. Okay. Dig that. And then this one, oh, he might just swirl that way. Well, that's fun. Off the side of this petal. Where's this one going to go? Oh, that's fun. That's fun. So I started on the side of each one of those petals and come up and wrap it around. Big, big fat swirls. And then as I go back and fill those in, and to fill in this spot, I'm going to continue to follow that contour and make that swirl fatter and fatter and fatter until I have filled it in. Mostly blue, tiny bit of white. I'll come back in a little bit and accentuate some of those swirls with some more white, maybe with my medium brush. But for now, mostly blue. Bigger, bigger, bigger. And my goal when I'm done with this top is to have all of that canvas filled in. Okay. So we make our swirls just bigger and bigger. Use plenty of paint. Don't be stingy with your paint. Load that brush up. Oh, edges. Don't forget your edges. Go ahead and wrap that blue all the way around. Let's see this one. Let's see, maybe this one, since this is kind of created like a balloon shape here. So maybe off of this petal, I have a swirl in a swirl. That's, oh, fun, fun, fun. So my goal at this point, again, is to fill this all in, mostly blue, little bit of white. And I'm accentuating swirls in different places where I want them by adding just a tiny bit more white. I knew I wanted a swirl and a swirl, so I added a little more white there. And then I'll go back with maybe my medium brush and do a little more accentuating with those swirls. But I love how my swirls just kind of feed off of each other. So I have this big lovely one here, and it comes up and goes to the right, but then it also comes up and comes to the left. And you know what? You're painting. You don't have to do any of this, right? You can just paint it in, just a solid color if you want. That is entirely up to you. But man, swirls make my heart happy. Okay. So at this point, I'm looking, making sure I've got coverage. Making sure all my spots are filled in. Making sure my swirls are going the way I want them to go. Getting my edges. Okay. So I'm looking at it. I'm feeling like I like the direction I'm going. I think I'm going to do just a little bit more with my big brush. Still messy. I'm going to take just a little bit more white. And I'm going to accentuate those swirls just a little further. This guy right here. That's fun. And I'm doing this with a messy brush and just adding little bits of white to it, because at this point, I don't want to lay white on top of it. I want to kind of blend it in a little. So messy blue brush, I'm adding white to it. There. Accentuate this guy a little more. Oh, that's lovely. That was kind of an accident. That pop of white right there, kind of like it. So I'm going to see if I can recreate that accident. What does our friend Bob say? There are no mistakes, only happy accidents. And that was definitely a happy accident. Okay. So I've done about all I can do right now with my big brush, right? Fill that in, have the lay of the land with all those fun swirls. At this point, you can stop there if you want, or you can go to one of your smaller brushes, like maybe our medium brush. Make sure it's cleaned and dried out. And a little bit of white. And accentuate those swirls just a little more. And again, we're doing this while this is wet, so it blends. So we're not laying white on top, we're blending white in. But I'm just giving this some lovely shushes. Just shush and walk away. Shushing and walking away. Just accentuating some of those swirls. The beauty of this is you can decide that none of this is for you, and you just paint it all blue and move on. Oh, Andrea, I may have to go look at the moon. I'm already planning, because it's nice out. I'm already planning a fire when we're done. Got to get the time out of that fire pit. I worked so hard on that last year. Oh my goodness, we haven't talked about food in a long time, have we? Okay, because our friend Emily isn't here to talk about food. So Laura, you have to let her know we're talking about food tonight. I just got a text from my husband. It's surprise supper night. So I have no idea what he's bringing home, but it's usually something we've not had before. So I'm kind of excited. Just had to lay that out there, because again, we've not talked about food for a while. But I still love butter. Okay. So let's take a few more minutes. Again, if you feel that I'm moving too fast, or you're not getting the hang of it, and you really need to like slow down and focus on it and work on this a little bit, I'm recording. The recording will be available about 5 minutes after class is over. It'll be in the Facebook event in the discussion section. I'll put the Zoom link there so you can go in and find the recording. And then maybe tomorrow, if all is right with the world, maybe not tomorrow, I have something to do tomorrow, maybe Monday, I will, I'll have it up on YouTube, on the studio's YouTube channel. But in the interest of time and getting us done at a decent hour, I think I'm going to go ahead and move on. And I think at this point, I want to give this time to dry. I'm really wanting to work on those petals, but I don't want to take the chance of bringing blue down into those petals because I really want to crisp them up and then start to give them a little bit of shading. I want to let that blue dry a little bit. So how about we play down here in the center of our flower? So if you did homework, if you Googled center of a sunflower, you now know what the goal is. The original painting has just like dashed lines that go around, still like in a bullseye down to the middle, okay? They just did some dashed lines. I'm gonna play a little bit with it. I'm gonna see if I can get them to look a little more like seeds. Let me show you what I mean. I'm going to take my medium brush. If you have a brush that's a little bit older and is a little bit splayed out, that's a really good one for this. Mine isn't. I have a new medium brush and he's going to work just fine. I'm just going to load him up with paint. You could use a Q-tip, right, Andrea? You could totally use a Q-tip. But my goal is to go around. It's going to look kind of like a rainbow. I'm going to paint it like bullseye, round and round. Let's see. I'm going to use brown, this chocolate brown, and maybe just a tiny bit of white. I might add more colors in later, but chocolate brown, tiny, tiny bit of white. And I'm doing little dash, little doot brush strokes. I'm going to go around and then I'm going to do a closer row toward the middle and then a little closer toward the middle. Use a lot of paint. Don't be stingy with your paint. Oh, that's too much white. And be messy here. Okay, messy here is good. I wonder what one of my bigger brushes, skinny ways, would look like. Get a bigger brush here. I feel like those are almost too small. I'm just going to experiment a little bit. Ooh, like a bigger brush. Bigger brush holds more paint. So right now I'm using just chocolate brown and white, tiny, tiny bit of white. And then I'm going to get in there and play with a little bit of that mustardy yellow, I think. But right now, just chocolate brown and white. Down to my bullseye middle. Oh, that's fun. And remember, our goal is to kind of see rows of seeds, but not super duper perfect. Mess them up a little bit. Oh yeah, I like a bigger brush. Okay. With that messy brush, what if I add a little bit of that, just a little bit of that mustardy yellow? What if I'm not going to put it everywhere, but what if I accent half a row right there? Let me get close. What if I accent just half or maybe 3/4 of one of my middle rows? That's fun. I like that a lot. I might even add a touch of white to that. I'm afraid this is going to be too much white, but I'm going to do it anyway. Oh, that's fun. I like that. Okay, I'm gonna stop playing with it right now. So stop touching it. But that's fun. Nothing real precise about it. It's just kind of messy. There comes a point that you have to stop messing with it because you turn it into all one muddy color. So I don't know that I'm done with it yet, but I'm going to stop and leave it alone so I don't continue to mess with it and blend it and turn it into all one shade of brown. I'm going to leave it be. Leave it be for a moment, let it dry a little bit. Okay. And how about 8:30? We'll move on. So that gives you about 4-ish minutes. Let's take, when you're done with that, let's take a few minutes and look and see if we have wet blue around the edges of those petals. You can see I'm just running my finger along the edge of those petals because the way I paint, I use a lot of paint when I paint. I have a tendency to load my brush up. And when you paint like that, when you paint like I do, you have a tendency to get big like rolls of paint along the edges of things. And those are going to take a long time to dry. So I'm just going to go here along the edges of my flowers and smooth any of those rolls out that might be there. There we go. And we'll give it about another 3-4 minutes and we'll come back and we'll play a little more in those flowers. We'll crisp those edges up. We'll start to add a little bit of shading. I might mess in that center a little more, but for now I'm going to leave it alone. Is everybody breathing tonight? Everybody breathing it out? Breathe, breathe, Orsina's. Let it out. Oh, oh, she just outed you, Orsina. She just fronted you out in front of the entire Zoom class. Somebody's not breathing tonight, evidently. Ooh, Andrea, let me see those colors. Oh, is that a Mexican sunflower? That color is gorgeous. Oh, that's good color, sister. Mm. So now might be a really good time since we're going to get back into those petals. Let's take, I know I said 8:30, let's take a couple more minutes. Now might be a good time to rinse your brushes out and get clean water, because I know I've got a lot of murkiness happening in my water right now. And I want to keep those, I want to keep my petals kind of bright yellow. Oh, that's okay, Andrew. I love that, that reddish color. That's pretty. I think those are Mexican sunflowers. Isn't that what they're called? Mm, yeah. Okay, so we'll take another few minutes. I'm going to step away and go rinse everything out really good. Remember, you can tap, tap, tap in the bottom of the cup to knock the paint out of your brushes. Very gently, tap, tap, tap. And we're going to come back and work on those petals. So you're going to want some yellow, some white, maybe some of that reddish brown. We'll see. We'll see what happens. But how about 2 minutes? We'll be back. Let's go get some clean water. Okay, let's get ready and go in and play in those petals a little more. So I think I'm going to start with yellow and a little bit of white. I'm going to use my medium brush. You may not need to do this, but I'm a messy painter, so I need to do this. I'm going to clean up those edges a little bit. And then I'm going to start to add a little bit of that mustardy yellow and maybe a little bit of that reddish brown if you have it, that burnt sienna, and work on a little bit of shading down in here. Okay, let me show you what I'm talking about. So medium brush, clean it out, dry it off. I'm going to start with the color that I started with. Okay, so I started with bright yellow and a tiny bit of white. And I'm going to come back skinny ways and I'm going to clean those petals up, clean those edges. Essentially doing what I've already done. But now that you have that base layer there, you can play a little bit. What if out here toward the edges, what if I add a little more white? A little more white out there. You don't have to. You can stay with whatever color you have. But I like the idea of a sunflower that has streaks of color in it. And it's one of those things that's going to be so subtle, it's going to be hard for you to see. But in real life, that those streaks of color make it that much more interesting. I might even, with my yellow and white, play in some of these the edges of some of these smaller petals too. You don't have to paint the entire flower all over again, but this is a really good time to crisp up some of those edges if things got a little wayward, which in my world they usually do. So I'm a messy painter. I'm all about big, broad strokes. Get a little yellow and some yellow and white streaks in these small petals. Because even the most plain yellow sunflower that you look at, it's not just yellow. It has the way the sunlight hits it. It has all different shades of yellow in there, depending on how the light hits. Oh, I'm starting to get a little crazy here. More white there. A little more yellow, white out here. Oh, that's fun. This is where I really need you to let go and start to play. Okay, there's no right or wrong here. Okay, there is right and wrong. Okay, let's not be crazy. It would be different, maybe not wrong, but it would be different if you stopped following the contour of your petals. If you started painting side to side, that might be a little strange, because flower petals, right, they come from the middle and they grow out. So I'm gonna, again, there's no right or wrong, but I'm gonna continue to follow the contour of those petals. And when I say contour, I mean that outside edge, and then work my way in. So again, I'm starting with that yellow and white. Ooh, the sun might really hit this guy right here. Oh, bam. Or maybe right here. Oh, nice. So I've got my yellow and white on there. That's fun. And then I'm going to start to, with that messy brush, I'm going to start to head into some of that mustardy yellow. And that mustardy yellow, I'm going to use that for my shading. So I'm going to use that skinny ways down on my big petals, down in some of those cracks between the small petals. Let me get close. Right here. Maybe down in here. Using that mustard yellow to help identify some petals a little bit of outlining maybe. So mustardy yellow first, and then we can move into a little bit of that reddish brown. I'm not there yet. I'll show you that in a second. I'm kind of using that mustardy yellow and get down in between those petals the way I brought that green down in between in the background. Kind of the way I'm using that. Adding that little bit of shading down in there. And then I'm going to come down for my small petals. The way those small petals grow, they kind of curl a little bit. They kind of curl out a little bit. So they're going to be shadowed right in the middle. I'm going to start that with this mustardy yellow. And I'm going to pull up and let go. Let me get close so you can see. So I have this petal. It's going to be a little darker right here in the middle, almost like we're creating a flame. So a little baby raindrop, little baby teardrop, right in the middle of the bigger petal teardrop. Again, none of this is precise. It's just another little layer. When you step back away, oh, that's fun. So I'm still just using that mustardy yellow. I'm not into that reddish brown yet, not yet. Andrea, you might be into that reddish brown by now because your flower color is different. I'm going to get in the middle of all of these little petals with that mustard yellow. And then with mustard yellow on my brush and a whole lot of caution, I'm going to use the tiniest bit of that reddish brown. Things can get weird fast with that burnt sienna. So I'm going to start with mustard yellow and add a little bit of reddish brown. I'm going to give a little swipe here and see how that makes me feel. Using it closest to the middle of the flower, because if you go a little darker closer to the middle, it's going to set things down in a little bit. It's going to add a little more dimension. I'm using my medium brush and I'm using it skinny ways. I feel like I'm creating little flames all the way around here. Sunflowers are one of those things, as you paint them, if you're not happy with your end result, you come back in with yellow and white and play a little more. So you start light and you go darker. And then if you're not happy, then you can go back lighter again. And I really feel like sunflowers, the more layers you get on there, the cooler they are. So you can play in this flower forever and get different results each time. Now things are still a little weird where my petals come to the center, where the petals meet that really dark middle. Not worried about that yet. That's one of the last things I'll do is fix that middle. A little bit of that reddish brown on my big petals. A little bit. Yeah, see, not sure how I feel about that, but that's okay. Take a little bit of yellow, a little bit of white, go back in and soften it. Kind of dry brushing a little bit of that reddish brown up there. Oh, fun. Feel like I want to come back in with a little bit of white and accentuate a couple of those petals, the edges of them. Oh, fun. Ooh, that little bit of white really pops there. I like that. Oh, you guys, we're doing good. We're almost done. And when I say we're almost done, it means class is almost over. You may not be done with your painting. You may sit and play. You may leave it sit and come back to it tomorrow. That is entirely up to you. That's one of the bright spots of us not being at the studio, right? You're not tied to my time frame. Kind of cool. Oh, fun, fun. Okay. I always like to think about these petals. If I have a light spot, I have a dark spot, right? So if I worked to make the insides of these petals darker with that mustard yellow, reddish brown, then I just went back and worked to make the outsides of those petals with a little bit of white, a little bit of white yellow, to make those lighter, right? If you have a light spot or if you have a dark spot, you should have light. Okay. So the last thing I'm going to do here tonight, I'm going to bring those petals to the center. I need to fix this line all the way around. I'm going to do that with a little bit of that mustardy yellow, I think. And I'm going to do one last little row of seeds, I guess. One last little mush mush row. I like that bigger brush for that. I'm going to get my bigger brush. Oops, wrong one. So I'm back to my bigger brush because that's what I used here in the middle. I'm going to use that mustardy yellow, and I'm just going to give little toot toot toots all the way around there. Just kind of camouflages that where they come together a little bit. You may not need to do much of that. You may need to do a lot of that. I have a couple spots that got really kind of crazy. Add a little bit of white in there just for fun. Ooh, a little white highlight. That's nice. Oh, and remember I said earlier, I wasn't sure if I was done with my sunflower. Now that I have that little bit of white there around the edge, I feel like I want to accentuate this a little more. So this is something you can just keep playing with. Keep playing and having fun. And I can get back in there in the middle and play a little because it's dried, right? So I'm going to go back over and play a little bit and not worry about turning it into mud. A little circle there. Ooh, I just had a thought. I kind of want to play in the sky a little. I have this brilliant turquoise color that I think would be lovely up there. You know, this is where it all goes sideways, right? I like to take it one step too far, realize I've gone too far after it's too late. But you only live once, right? Okay. So let me talk you through this, right? So essentially we're done, right? Our painting's done tonight. You keep playing. Again, you might need to let those petals dry a little bit and then come back in and play a little more. Because if you mess with them too much, the beauty of painting while they're wet is they blend, right? Acrylic paint blends while it's wet. Once it's dry, it will not blend. So the beauty of playing now is everything's blending nicely, right? That can be a problem though, because it'll all blend into one same color. And a lot of times it's like one muddy color. You've lost all your definition. So you might let this dry a little bit and then come back in and play a little more once it's a little dry. That's kind of what I'm doing in the sky right now. So my sky is pretty dry. I found this beautiful turquoise color in my paint bag and I can't resist it. So I'm going to go up there and play a little bit. I want just a little, oh yeah, not too much. Just a couple random little turquoise shushes. And I know if things go sideways, I'll put a little bit of blue and white back on my brush, blend it all back in. But I do believe with that, we are done tonight. I will leave you here so you can continue to play and get crazy in there with your flower a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and end the recording. Ooh, one last thing. Remember, I said at the beginning, it's important for every artist to sign their painting, right? You don't have to sign on the front if you don't want to. You're welcome. You don't have to sign on the front if you don't want to. You can sign on the back. If you decide to sign on the back, so if you sign on the front, let's start there. Artists usually sign bottom left or bottom right. Stretch canvases are lovely because you can sign on the edge with paint or paint pen if you want. If you don't want a signature on the front, you can sign on the back. If you sign on the back, never here, always out here on the edge. You don't want it to bleed through. If you sign here, it could bleed through to the front, and that's a bummer. You can't, that's hard to come back from. Sign out here on the edge where the wood is, okay? So that's what I know for tonight. I don't think I'm going to sign mine yet because I don't think I'm done. I think I'm going to continue to play, and I'm kind of weird about that. I'm a little superstitious. Once I've signed a painting, it's done. I won't touch it again. And I really think I want to play a little more in this one. So I would love to see your paintings. Please feel free to take a picture of yourself with your painting. Send it to me. You can either private message it to the studio. You can email it to me. I would love to see them. And give me just a few minutes and I will have the recording up in the Facebook event. It'll be a Zoom link in the discussion. So you can go back and access the recording. And then one last thing, if you have any ideas for what you'd like to paint in April, I think we have our first 2 weeks all sorted out, but that means I need a couple more ideas. And then watch for the April calendar. Tomorrow, maybe Monday, we'll have the April calendar posted. So for tonight, we're done. I'm done. You keep painting if you want. I'm Shauna Sue from Crooked Door Studio. Thank you so much for joining me for Painting Through the Pandemic. This has been a lot of fun tonight, and I'll see you next week. Thanks.